I never used to be computer savvy, but I got home at 5:45, and here I am with two laptops in front of me. What is going on? Anyway, it is 6 o'clock. We will call to order. We have quorum. Holly has said that, so call to order. We have item 2, confirmation of agenda. Do we have a mover and a seconder?
Move it.
Muriel and Carolyn seconded it. Be it resolved that the committee confirm the agenda as presented. Any in opposition? Hearing and seeing none, we will carry that. Excuse me. Item 3 is declaration of pecuniary interest. We all know this. If there's anything to add later on in the meeting with information gathered, declare it then, or you can declare it now. And we have number 4, delegations and presentations. And we have the blessing of Charles Fernandez, who is, well, he won't tell us what his position is in the Dundalk Food Bank. And if we could have, do we have to have a mover and seconder for that? So all in mover and seconder for the delegation.
I'll move.
Jerry and Carolyn second it. Well, I guess the floor is yours, Charles. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time, everyone. Try to keep my comments concise. So the Dundalk Food Bank is the community group that's been operating in the Dundalk and serving the Dundalk Inn area, including the rural townships in all directions, for well over 30 years, well before my time of being involved. As a community group, we function within a township space. So those who don't know, there is a room at the building that houses the Dundalk Library, the Southgate Ruth Hargrave Memorial Library in Dundalk, which is dedicated to the food bank. And we really appreciate the hospitality and cooperation with the township. That was part of the original intent of that building, which it has multiple uses. So that's one of the uses. That's us. And we basically meet people on a weekly basis, more often as needed, depending on their schedules, provide them with what we call emergency food help. But unfortunately, especially in the last few years, emergency turns into regular all too often for people for different reasons. And the reason, maybe one thing I'll mention, which may be well known and kind of even obvious to many in this group, but I will just mention that we have seen a dramatic increase. I can say from one Christmas to the last, from 2022 going back to 2021, we had huge, like about 50% more children coming to get help at Christmas time. And we've seen that reflected in monthly or regular use of the food bank. We're also seeing people come more often. We had been suggesting people come once a month, and when people tell us they just don't have enough food, more often than that, their frequency of use has gone up as well. So what I want to mention to this group is we get one vantage point into housing need in particular, because that's something we've observed with a number of people we know, the rents that they're paying compared to their income, whether it's through government transfers or work. The proportion of rent is much higher than it used to be. We do see people who are homeowners, not as common as you can understand with the food bank, mostly renters. We're also seeing increased numbers of people, for one reason or another, have had to leave the place where they live. So we don't get involved with that directly, but some version of from eviction on the one side, all the way across to like they had a better opportunity. So there are different reasons people are moving, but the group of people we serve in our community has been forced to move, let's put it that way, for circumstances beyond their control far too often. So that's just a little bit of background on what we're seeing through the Dundalk Food Bank. One more thing I will add is we're seeing a lot more people who are working and employed, often with 2 adults and children, both adults working and employed than we used to see. So I would just like to put forward a couple of questions for discussion with the group here, because I know a little bit about what the Housing Committee is trying to do. One point would be, when we're talking about affordable housing, how can we put on the map different affordability needs? So the need for I have a son, and he and his wife were just married a couple of years ago. They actually bought a house shortly around the time they were married. So they're dealing with affordable housing. A lot of young couples are. In this case, they're able to buy something, but that's a struggle. We know that. However, I would say it's a very different circumstance than many people using the food bank. So I would like to sort of suggest to the group, you might want to consider, I would like to ask you about, have you thought about segmenting the different affordability needs? Because for some people, it's a question of, do we get the starter home that we want to before we start our life together? The group of people we're serving, it's, do we pay the rent or buy food? Do our children go hungry, or do we pay for gas? So like that, I would like to ask that question of this committee. Have you thought about segmenting the question of affordability and looking at the different kinds of priorities as a result? Should I just leave that question? I have one more question after that, but I'd be interested in hearing your conversation about that.
Make a comment.
Yeah. Thank you, Charles.
Jerry, I think you have to move closer to the computer or we can't hear you.
Yeah, thank you, Carolyn.
Yeah, when we first started looking at this committee, the possibility of a committee, we talked about whether it was going to focus on rents or ownership or supported housing and so on. And I think our decision early on was we need to look at housing in Southgate, housing period. And so that includes all of the different things that now the solutions will be need to be tailored to the type of need that Charles is talking about. But it's in my opinion, we still need to look at all. It's a gigantic issue. It is, but I think we need to be looking at housing in general terms and find solutions for every group as we can. So.
Okay. Any comments from the committees in answering that question or questions?
I think Jerry's right. And I think more specifically, it's a housing that's affordable for the people that live and work in your community. Like there are low to mid-income people that can't get into the game. They can't get into the housing game, whether it's rental or you're owning your own home. And so it has to be, I think, geared to income, like for different brackets.
Yep.
And homelessness is a whole different thing. It's a whole different situation.
And that's not, it is tied to the housing, but it's in a way, that's something that I don't know how we can address that, but with the Charles, with segmenting, we can do what we can with the development, but social housing is what you're actually looking at. Same with Jerry. That's where the rent, we have to get more rental units. And one of the things with Bill 23 and all the changes there, and I think Clint can verify this, I might get it wrong, but we're allowed 3 different units on one lot now. So you can be a primary resident. You can, have a rental unit inside. You can have a granny flat. There's 3 units on one lot. So that is supposed to help the rental shortage and help the people, I think, and I'm going to say this, help the people with the big mortgages that when they buy these houses. So I saw Clinton's hand up. Can you share anything with what Charles has said and my comment?
Sure, sure. I just want to clarify that policy you're talking about, the 3 units on one lot, is specific to urban settlement areas. And by that, I mean fully serviced ones. So the only real community that services right now would be Dundalk. So it's not going to help someone in Holstein or Swinton Park or like that, the 3-unit policy.
Yeah.
But I just want to clear that for the committee. So yes, it will provide some assistance, but it may not be the miracle cure for someone in the West End,
No.
because it's just not there yet.
Yeah.
I don't really have any other comments in terms of how we split it up, but I'll leave that for the committee to debate, and I'll save my comments for my reports.
Okay, Muriel, go ahead. Unmute.
There you go.
There you
Sorry
go.
about that.
No
One of the
worries.
things we've talked at this meeting is, and I know you already know this, Charles, too, that there's a lot of people renting within all the new big houses. Like they're sublets from whoever's owning these buildings. And some of them are food bank users then. So one of the things we have talked at the committee here is trying to encourage developers then to actually build houses, to have properly set up units within a house, even like to have it roughed in at least, so that it could be, so that there's going to be legal exits from basements, that kind of thing, and at least the roughed in plumbing for another unit. It's just stuff like that. I don't know where that's at in terms of actually becoming reality, but like acknowledging that we have a lot of renters in the new houses, and we'll likely have that in future.
So Charles, I think, the segment part, you're looking at a whole different, you're looking at people who want to buy a starter home, people who buy the bigger homes. You're talking about more multiplexes than for renters. And that's a social housing thing from Gray that we have to really partner with, don't you think? Is that your intent there, Charles?
Well, I'm happy to respond a little bit. I do appreciate everyone's comments. I think, like I mentioned, I'm aware of my own family of the starter home question and that kind of thing. It's a different question. I think it would be helpful, speaking as a community member and somebody involved with the food bank, to have a statement from this committee that outlines what the different segments are, which are different needs. My observation is that often the conversation about affordability focuses on people are trying to get into the home ownership realm out of previously renting. For instance, again, my son and daughter-in-law from a couple of years ago, and it's really important. But I would suggest, I would like to see as a community member, could you as a committee put out something, maybe find something that you can endorse, and it's like, what are the different segments and what are the different needs in those different segments? And there might be 3 or 4. It might be like the idea of within the settlement area within Dundalk, what can we do as a community, and the municipality in particular, to encourage multiple dwellings within the same lot, the three lot option. We have friends who did that who live in Kitchener. We're just visiting them a couple months ago. So that's one segment. Another might be how do we create affordable housing for those who want to buy, and how can we work with developers on that? But a third and separate one. See, I think if you identify all 3, and there may well be more different kinds of affordability issues, I think by highlighting the different needs, you highlight different kinds of solutions. My concern is right now, most of the solutions are oriented towards new buyers, people who are thinking about, can we afford to buy a new place? And that's a very important segment. Don't get me wrong. Like I said, it's my own family, but I would suggest by highlighting at least 2 or 3 different kinds of needs in our community, we'll have advanced the conversation, because we realize we need solutions that are different for the new home buyers and different for the people who are deciding between rent and buying food. Again, legitimate needs in all segments. But I think if you would do that as a committee, and maybe ask staff for support on and maybe what are the 3 or 4 different kinds of housing needs that are presently before our community, and what are the different kinds of solutions appropriate to the different needs, just at a very general level, would be helpful in advancing the conversation.
Okay. Well, I'm sure we can discuss that. So any other questions for Charles? Jerry, go.
Charles said he had a second question, but I have a question that I think needs to be asked, and that is, how sustainable is the food bank going forward? Considering the rapid development and growth and the increased use of the food bank, how sustainable is it? And
Well,
when and if it becomes unsustainable, who picks up the slack then?
well, that's a good question, Jerry, but that's really, that's the food bank issue, isn't it?
I can.
Holly?
Sorry, Charles, we're not able to hear you. Sorry. And just as a general reminder, usually delegations and presentations are not question and answer periods. Certainly we can ask questions of Charles based on what he had to say about the food bank, but I did just want to bring that to the committee's attention.
Yeah. Yes, and Jerry, that's why that's a good question, but I hate to say let's if there's any other questions for Charles, we have to move on here.
Sure, yeah, I did have one more part of my presentation that I hadn't completed yet. If I could just finish that and I'll leave that with the committee. So an observation again from my expertise, which is more or less local, but we're talking about several hundred people in our community who have used the food bank in the last few months, unique, like different people. I would say you might also want to consider, I would ask you as a committee to consider the different kinds of tools that the municipality has. And I'm aware of 2 different kinds of tools, and I just like to put that to you as a committee to look at as you go forward. One is negotiating with developers, encouraging developers, working with developers, which is obviously a big tool. It's a really important one. The other thing that I think that would benefit the community, from my experience of what I've seen, is can this committee identify available municipally owned properties that could be suitable for affordable housing of different kinds, but especially oriented towards the segment of the community that we serve at the food bank. So I'm just putting that forward as a sort of recommendation to your committee, part of my presentation, that you would identify within a set period of time, whatever that means to you, a couple months, few months, whatever, identify municipally owned property that might be appropriate for affordable housing. That's another tool I think that the municipality might want to consider. Thank you.
Jerry, Martin appears to have left the meeting, so if you could assume the chair until he's back, that would be great.
Okay. I just would like to thank Charles for taking his time tonight and speaking to us about the food bank. It's something that is going to be there and it's with us, and we need to be aware all the time, I think, of the health of the food bank too. And wouldn't it be neat if there was no such thing as a food bank? But anyway. Okay. Thanks again, Charles.
You're welcome.
Sorry, guys, I'm back. I don't know what happened there.
Okay.
So thank you, Charles. We'll get into the be resolved that the committee received the Dundalk Food Bank delegation for information. Do I have a mover and a seconder? No, we just can carry it, can't we? Anyone opposed? Hearing and seeing none, we'll move on. That is carried. Number 5, adoption of minutes. Mover and seconder, please.
I'll move.
Jerry and Nola second it. Be resolved that the committee approved the minutes from the April 26, 2023 Affordable Attainable Housing Committee meeting as presented. Anyone opposed? That will be carried. Okay, and excuse me here. I apologize for what I did there. Get blocked out. I don't know what I did. I'm going to blame myself. Number 6. Staff updates, 6.1, role of the committee in terms of reference update. Would this be your bailiwick, Holly, or? Okay,
Yep.
so the floor is yours.
Perfect, thank you. We just
You're
wanted to
welcome.
provide an update because we haven't met with the last meeting being canceled, that council did approve the changes to the terms of reference. And so they have been updated and they're on the agenda for information. And then also on our website if anybody would need to reference them. And I just am going to share my screen. We put together a little bit of a presentation at the request of a member of the committee, just to discuss kind of the role of what the committee is. And so I've taken most of the information from the terms of reference and we can kind of go through it quickly, but I will be brief just because I know that it is quite a big agenda. So the role of the Affordable Attainable Housing Committee is to provide recommendations and an overall strategy for council's consideration regarding the implementation of community affordable attainable housing plans to support homelessness prevention in the township of Southgate. So basically to develop a strategy for Southgate Council to address the present community challenges of affordable housing, consider a strategy with the recommended timelines, identify possible resources, programs, and support services, promote awareness about the importance and benefits of affordable housing, and to consider engage with and advocate to all other levels of government for increased funding as well as changes in legislation and regulation. So the committee's role is to make recommendations to the Township of Southgate Council through the assigned support senior staff. So that is Clinton, the municipal planner. Decisions and recommendations of the committee must be made by formal resolution at a committee meeting where a quorum of members is present. And subcommittees can only be created by way of formal resolution at a committee meeting where a quorum of members is present. So members are encouraged to engage with public, private, and not-for-profit sector experts to develop an affordable housing strategy that will ensure sustainable outcomes. And members are encouraged to find and share information through the consent section of the agenda. And all items that you do find can be forwarded to me and I will include them on the agenda. And then we just wanted to add the who to contact page in case you needed information. So the staff liaison or the senior support staff would be Clinton Stradwick. And then any questions that you may have about procedural guidance, just reach out to myself. If I'm unavailable, any member of the clerk's department, so Lindsay Green, our clerk, or Alicia Nelm is able to give you a hand as well.
Okay, thank you, Holly. Question, Carolyn?
So I was the one to ask for this, and the reason I wanted to ask for it is because I know that there's always a relationship or a dynamic between committees and town. Like I'm not completely familiar with the municipal structure. That's not the structure I worked in. So a relationship between the committees, people who work for the town and the council. So it was to get a better handle on the role of this committee. So when you work through that package, it sounds to me that we are more of a working committee as opposed to a consulting committee. But I wanted to better understand the dynamic between our role as a committee and the role of staff. Because obviously we don't direct staff, like we're not supervisors, we're not employers, right? So I totally understand that. So one of the things that to me, just looking at that is interesting that we're supposed to develop a strategic plan, and that within that plan, like when I'm looking at our backgrounds and how complex this is, I would say that a plan like that might you need to involve consulting other things. And then I think that there's a line that I don't understand between what is our work as a committee and what is staff work, and where do we not step on toes, or where do we not I'm trying to present this not as a conflict, but as a way to totally understand our role, right? So if we were to seek out grants or partnerships or consultants, is that stepping outside of our role? Because looking at this description, it sounds like we are a working committee, as opposed to a committee that I can only use a different sector to give reference to a committee that senior staff would consult with, as opposed to a committee that would do work. And so I'm trying to clearly understand that, because we do so much discussion. But if we're working outside of our parameters, or if we're not able to get anything done, like, we need to use our time effectively. And I want to know where our parameters are. So that's why I asked. Yep, Holly?
Yeah, definitely. And so the role of the committee is to make advice and recommendations to council. And that's through currently Clinton, the senior staff liaison. So any recommendations or formal resolutions that are made at the committee then have to go to council for approval. So it would be the same for if you were looking for grants or funding, if you were looking to hire a consultant, that type of stuff, anything that would require budget would need to go through council approval. And then that would be done by way of recommendation through the planner.
And so it's not that it can't be done. It's just the procedure needs to go through Clinton to council and back. Because
Yeah.
am I correct though, Holly, that we are supposed to be a committee that is a working committee as opposed to a consulting committee, if you understand what I mean between the two?
I am not sure that I totally understand.
Okay, so if if we were a consulting committee, people would bring us ideas. This is what we're going to do. What do you think about that? And we would provide feedback. That to me is a consulting committee. But then a working committee is one that is actually developing plans and ideas and presenting them. But I also understand that we are not employed by the town, nor do we supervise employees of the town, nor do we direct employees of the town. So I'm just trying to find that balance to make sure that we keep it in balance.
Yeah, certainly. So I would say that the committee would act more along the lines of a working committee, and then any decision would be funneled up through council by Clinton, or in Clinton's absence, it could be our municipal clerk, but just by the senior staff that would be supporting the committee.
And so then in terms of, I know in your PowerPoint, you talked about seeking partnerships outside of the township. So it would be okay to seek those partnerships, but we would need to bring them to Clinton and then take them to council and back. Is that a good?
Yeah, we definitely encourage to reach out to other partners and community groups. And then certainly if there's an item that comes up, to bring it to my attention or Clinton's attention, we can bring it to council, or sorry, to the committee. And then once there was a formal resolution, it could certainly go to council for approval.
Okay. And do you understand why I was seeking the clarification? I just think it's a little, we all have our different roles, and I think it's important to stay in our lane, but I just wasn't clear on what this committee's lane was.
Well, yeah, definitely. I think it is a good questions to ask. And certainly if you have any further questions, reach out to either of us by email for sure.
Okay, thank you.
I think Martin here, I think everything over the last year and a half, we've known and seen how a housing committee and affordability, even the government doesn't know what affordability means. They give a token gesture of what it means to them, which doesn't apply to the common person. So I think, Carolyn, in a way, we have a hybrid committee here. Mm-hmm. You know, we're hybrid. We can do whatever we need to do to bring before council, but I'm going to bring it up when the credit union approached Jerry about this grant, and the timing was really tight. Really, with that money not being township money, could not have that gone through? And I'll leave that to you, Holly, and I'll leave it to Clinton to bring to the CAO. We don't need to talk about that tonight, but you know, that was something that we could have done and started to develop an affordable housing strategy with an outside consultant to try and get something going. So you don't have to answer that tonight, Holly, but maybe that could be a question to give to Dina or Clinton, because it was something that under the members are encouraged to engage with public by rights, not being township money. could not the group accept that or go through the grant? Or does that even have to go through the proper? So that's something to think about. So I saw your hand there, Carolyn, so.
So, yeah, so no, I don't think it's a question I expect an answer to tonight by any means. I think it has to be thought through from multiple perspectives. But if we have had time to follow the proper procedures, would that grant have been possible? That's question one. And question two, if it's not possible, then why? And not because I'm trying to create conflict, but because I'm trying to understand the role of the committee, because we shouldn't spend time on things that are not a role. And I actually don't want an answer tonight, because I think that is a collaborative conversation amongst town staff, and so that you guys can kind of wrestle with that, and just help me understand that role, because I want to make sure as I said, let's stay in our lane, get our work done. But I think we have to figure out what that is.
Yeah, and if they offered that money to a volunteer group in town, it probably wouldn't have been anything. But as the other hinge pin is, we are a committee of council, so we have to follow the procedural council things. So, you know, a question to be asked and answered privately. And Muriel, you're up.
Okay, just to add to that, I think we all understand and respect the procedures that need to happen, but I'm wondering, so many grant funding opportunities have such a tight timeline, and it's got tighter over the last few years. So how do we deal with that? Like, is there some way we can, be ready for another opportunity and then fast track it with council? Like, council know what we're doing all the way along, and perhaps have given some kind of preliminary go ahead or something, so that they know what's coming or what we want to have coming if we get an opportunity. But like, the council meetings, yes, they're regular, but they may not fit the time frame along with our preparation or whatever else. So if we can get some understanding of how that can work.
Well, I think we're going to have to cut this short, but I think the main thing is here. I hate to say that, but I think the main thing is here, is it a grant coming through the township, or is it something that because we're a committee of council, are we allowed to look for other grants? That's the hinge pin. Are we a committee of council? So if the township goes for a grant, or us, who's, where does it fall? Like the credit union was, and I'm going to keep this short. The credit union was primarily nothing to do with township money. So we'll leave it at that. Okay. So if we can talk about that, Holly, at a later point.
Yes, certainly.
So-
I can provide some more information going forward. I'll just maybe do some information gathering. Perhaps at the next meeting, I can bring a little bit more information about that.
Yeah.
I know historically in the past, if a committee of council, an advisory committee or otherwise applied for grant funding, it did need council's approval before the grant could be applied for. I will just confirm, and then perhaps at the next meeting, I can just provide a quick update.
Okay, sounds great. Okay, so let's move on to 6.2, municipal surplus land update. Clinton.
Thank you. Holly, can you put my report up on the screen, please? All right. There we go. So I was asked to provide an update on municipally owned affordable housing sites, or potential municipal affordable housing sites. And so we've sort of been scouring, and this has been a long process, because there's a lot of things that can detract from sites that make them not suitable for any type of development, let alone residential development. Something as simple as the previous use could be a gas station. All of a sudden, you've got severe contamination issues to worry about, that it may disqualify the site before we even start. So I have found a couple sites that I did want to share with the committee, and that I would encourage you to recommend further action into looking at them. But so the first one is actually in Dundalk. It's on Glenelg Street, and it's actually currently zoned EP, which is environmental protection. However, in discussions with the Conservation Authority, they are of the opinion that not all of it is actually EP land and could be scoped to accommodate a certain portion of the site for some form of development. So if you could scroll up a little bit, please, Holly, just to the next page. So there's kind of an idea of what we were thinking, is just the front portion of that. It's about 2.5 acres in size. So it's a decent size, enough to get, certainly not a huge high rise or anything, but enough to get a few small, maybe semis, or even one block of townhouses or something like that in that area. We confirmed with the engineers that while the site doesn't have wastewater, it is possible to get it to there. It stops like just a few not a few hundred meter, a few feet basically from the property line. That it could either be a gravity flow or potentially just a small pump system to pump it that short distance to get it to go to the gravity flow. So from that perspective, it's a very good site, because as soon as you can get on municipal services, you can increase your density quite a bit without having to worry about impacts on the water table and those sorts of things. So that's a very good thing as far as that's concerned. So this is one site. When we looked at it, we also looked at the frontage, and there's ample frontage there. There's quite a quite dense bush in there that we would likely want to actually remove some of those trees, actually maybe selectively log some of them, which could potentially be put back into the project afterwards if they were of good enough quality. So this is the first one in Dundalk that I think has the most potential. I've sort of given you an idea of the benefits of the site there. It's fully serviced. It can be at a higher density. It's more in keeping with surrounding development, in that you can walk to things, and the services that people might want, such as healthcare, banking, restaurants, groceries, childcare, are relatively close without the need of a car necessarily. So from my perspective, this and a school is certainly not very far from this site at all. So all of those things are supportive of this site for being a location for something like that. As I said, there's some challenges to it in my report, if you want to just flip to the next page. So one of the reasons is this is a natural heritage area. That's why Flato chose not to develop it. There were some sensitive species in the northern section of the site. However, we could look at refining that and doing some sort of scope DIS to make sure the natural heritage features are still maintained, yet we can provide some much needed affordable housing. Stormwater management is also something that needs to be addressed for any development. By that I mean, if we're going to pave it over, we have to find a way to deal with the water so it doesn't accumulate somewhere else. So we'd have to look at these studies. Who's going to pay for an EIS? Is that going to be the township doing that? Is that going to be a private developer or some other individual that's maybe looking to develop affordable housing? So those are some considerations for the site. As I said, I do think this is a preferred site as far as the two options, but I will present the second one here. The second one is on the other side of the township in Holstein. And you can see here, it's the actual area of the site is about 1.83 hectares. It's right adjacent to the former rail trail. And at one point, I believe it was actually used as a rail station in some former capacity. So again, the benefits for this site, it's affords individuals with transportation challenges to shop more locally. Being the Holstein store there serves food and other amenities. There's also a school, again, present very close to this site, as well as other things like daycare and that sort of thing, which are important supports for anyone with housing needs. So if we want to scroll up a little bit there. So then the challenges for the site is it's not serviced, and therefore water and wastewater servicing will need to be verified. So by that, I mean, we do something called a well test, where we have to drill a well or test adjacent wells to see if the quality of the water and the quantity of the water is sufficient to service however many units are planned for that site. So you do an investigation to find out, make sure the water's not contaminated, make sure the amount of water that you're getting can support, I don't know, say 8 units. It might be more, might be less, but that number, your servicing will dictate how many units you can actually get on there. And then the second piece is looking at what we call a nitrate study, which looks at how much effluent comes out of a particular septic system so that it doesn't pollute the groundwater. So the engineers do a calculation based on how many units you have and how much, as a general rule, they would generate in waste. And then that gets calculated through how it's treated through a particular septic system, and then how much is put in the ground. And there's a limit to how much you can put in there before it can affect the water table. So all of that would have to be investigated first for this particular site. Again, we have stormwater management to consider. And Holstein is unique in that most of it is actually considered to be within a floodplain. So we would want some guidance from the Conservation Authority prior to doing any development on there. Yes, there is lots of housing in Holstein, but there's also the big dam there that if it were to give way, that it might flood a significant portion of Holstein. So those are all considerations that have to be looked at and addressed before anything could proceed on this site. So that's about all I have as far as the two sites that we've found. I think they're potentially both viable. As I said, one is maybe a little more preferable than the other just because of the servicing aspect and its location. But they're both decent that they may be options, and I'll take questions.
Thanks, Clint. Jerry has one. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, Clint. This is it's comprehensive, and it's a really, really good information. I'm wondering, what I'm wanting to say is, how do we then put a hold on these two so they don't get sold out from under us? until we can figure out whether it's viable or not. Is that through a resolution?
Yeah, you would make a resolution and we would bring that forward to council to have them consider that. I can tell you right now, there's no immediate plans that I'm aware of for the sale of these properties, but certainly a resolution like that is the exact kind of thing we're looking for, to notify council that, hey, we've identified these two sites. We would like to keep them in our hands until we have a chance to investigate them further, and then proceed from there.
With support of the committee, then I would like to make that resolution.
I'd like to second that.
Okay,
If you just
No.
give me 1 second, Councilor Shipson, I can get something kind of typed up and then just make sure that I'm on the same page. Just give
Yeah.
me 1 second. Thank you.
yeah, no worries.
I do think it is, it's really positive that the Conservation Authority has seen that there can be some compromise or some negotiation or some form of agreement made that we could make use of this land.
That's true.
It just occurred to me that it also sort of addresses one of the questions the delegation had at the start of the meeting, so
Yep.
about identifying municipal lands. So
And Clinton, the one on Holstein, I know it's kind of far away from transit and what have you, but would that be a better place for a multiplex? Like, like a,
either
because
site,
everything's on septic anyway, so.
yeah, there's
know,
a finite amount we can put in that,
Yeah.
like in Holstein as a community, before the ground just says, no, we've had enough and there will be no more septics going in.
Yeah.
It's either site is possible for a multiplex of some sort if the engineering all works out for it. It really becomes a technical game at this point, in terms of, can you meet the stormwater management requirements, or can you meet the servicing requirements for water and wastewater, those sorts of things. So provided those technical things can be made, we've got some valuable sites there that I think have good potential.
Yeah, and that could be said for the one on Glenelg then too, right?
Absolutely.
For a multiplex, which would be more leaning towards social housing than, or
Whichever.
you know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So we have it here. Thank you, Holly. Be resolved that the committee receives staff report PL 2023-030 for information, and that the committee recommend to council that the two properties identified in the report be held for future consideration of an affordable housing project in the township of Southgate. And I think, do we have any comments on that? I think that's worded pretty good, Holly. Thank you. The only question I have, how does that get before council? Is it in the, is it a special report, or is it in the consent items from this, or it could be something that, thank you, Holly.
Yeah, so Clinton will create a report and bring it to a future council meeting, asking for council to consider the recommendation.
Okay.
For approval.
Yep, great. I just wanted that clarified. So all in favor? Anyone opposed? Oh,
Not opposed. No, I am in favor.
okay, that sounds good. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you. I'm assuming, Clinton, that's it for you?
No,
On this part,
actually,
on
this
part,
part,
anyway.
yes. I think Nola has a question.
Yeah, she
Her
did
hand is
too.
up.
So go ahead, Nola.
Yeah, I would just like, I think that these are great, and that this is a great action and recommendation, but in terms of what goes there, I think that should come after consultation with maybe the community and maybe some of the developers and planners, and for them to kind of come forth with something that's good for those sites. And our mandate is to make sure that whatever is done is affordable and good quality. And I don't think we want to get into sort of specifying what should go in there. Yeah, that's just my 2 cents on that. I think we should leave that for some consultation.
I think that will come through the report. Jerry, then Carolyn.
Only a quick comment, and that is the idea of a nonprofit housing corporation. I think it remains an item that we've got to seriously consider and try to figure out. And that would play into this whole concept of what might be appropriate to go on these properties. So.
Yeah, we have to have the properties first, and all that consultation will come after. That's right. Carolyn, go ahead.
And then my question or comment to Clint was not, again, to be answered right now, but what's our next step to like I guess is I'm seeking your advice and consultation for another meeting. What was your best step to try to operate make it happen? I can't say it today. Like, is it to partner with Grey County Housing? Is it to put it out there to developers we're interested in partnering? Like, maybe no developer picks it up. We can't force that hand, but I'm just thinking about, from a Southgate perspective, what would be the net? Okay, so we've held it, but that's not actually moving it forward. So for now, I know we can't answer it all tonight, but like what? I think that's some thinking, and I don't have that knowledge about what should be our next step then. So
well, I think the first, I'm still getting used to this procedural game. It kind of wears on me. The gray hair is genetic. But I think with going through the first process of actually putting the resolution that Nola and Jerry put forth, the land is there. After that's passed, if it's passed, right? That's the hinge pin. If it's passed, which I hope it would be, because it's not doing anything anyway, then we can start to say, okay, we have this land. What are we going to do with it? Do we open it up for a developer? Do we open it up and say, hey, Grey County, we have this land. What are you thinking? Because the municipality can't do it on its own. We need partners. So, that's that. So, any Muriel, and then Nola.
Sorry, the county was also going to be identifying potential properties. Has that happened? Do we know what they came up with?
Through the chair, I
yeah,
can answer. I can help with that. I believe they have identified a number of properties. I don't know how far along they are in that process. I can certainly find back and report back to you. One of the individuals in charge of that, her name is Liz Buckton, and she is a truly awesome person. And I think she would be a great resource that I can tap for you guys to give you an update on that and where the county is at with that.
I think that would be very helpful to know that too. Thank you.
Okay. All righty. So, Nola, go ahead.
I would just like to reframe things a little bit. I think Dundalk has a huge development project going on. I think you're going to be quite, the nature of the town is changing, and I think you'll end up becoming much more desirable from wherever those developers that are coming in now. And so given that housing is a priority and land is at a premium and is kind of a limited resource, I don't think there'll be any shortage of people coming forth with ideas for these developments. And it's up to us, I guess, like I said, to set the criteria that we want to see happen in there. And in this case, it would be density and affordability. But I think we have to change our thinking. And I also think that working with Grey County and maybe even Dufferin, because people don't respect the boundaries. I mean, they're going back and forth across these county lines all over the place. They're whipping around. And so there's some things that would be better placed in different areas, like in terms of, homelessness situations and things like that. But, and I can attest to what Clinton was saying. Liz Buckton is on the Institute for Southern Georgian Bay in a big way. And it would be great to have her come in, and she is awesome. And she's just a fantastic resource to bring in.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll end this, but the one thing, if it is our land, then we should be able to have a say in some kind of development. Doesn't have to be all semis and things. We can say, well, we put this aside because the committee wanted it, and we can do multiplexes. That's what we have to gear to. Unfortunately, a lot of developers aren't getting into the rental, and that's something that has to change. Anyway, Clinton, you're up again. You're up again, my man. 6.3.
I'm up again.
Oh, be it resolved, the committee received staff report. We already did that, right, Holly? Thank you. 6.3, current development in the township of Southgate, planner Clinton Stredwick. This is strictly for housing because I know there's a lot of development.
Yeah, and this is going to be a verbal update. So
Yep.
again, I'm going to ask Holly if she can open up the air photo there with the identified developments or areas where there's potential development. All right. So that I'm going to start off by saying this is not a for sure that all of these are going to develop right away or anything, or even the unit counts are not going to be 100%. This was done as at a very high level, this drawing, to try and get a handle on servicing and how, if these areas develop, how we were going to service them with water and sewer, and where we would be at with fire flows for needing water towers and that sort of thing. So I just wanted to clarify that first, that this, just because it's on this map doesn't mean it's going to develop tomorrow. It's some of them don't necessarily have applications in front of the town, but I will go through the select parcels that do currently have some sort of status with us. So the first and biggest one, I guess I'll put forward is number 1, which is down in the bottom right corner of the map, right down there. And this is a parcel that was owned by the township of Southgate, and through actually a partnership agreement with Flato, we've agreed to develop it sort of jointly. The road in particular. Now this road will be a bypass road that essentially will allow the eco park, which is on the west side there, where it says 20A and 20B and all of that road to come through right to Highway 10, because currently all of the industrial traffic has to come out and go through the main street of the village of Dundalk. And so to help with that, this bypass road was conceived a long time ago now. And now it's going to be constructed in the not too distant future. And with that, there's going to be a portion of industrial development at the back of it. That could be anything from warehousing to manufacturing to storage of, like a truck hauling yard for storing trailers. It could be like, there's a whole list of things that could potentially go in there. It doesn't mean they all will, but those are the types of things that could be in there to help spur development. Then moving further, the rest of the lands are going to be a mix of residential, commercial, and probably some sort of mixed commercial in residential. And with that, you'll get sort of what they call a work-live situation where you might have, I don't know, either an accounting office or a hairdresser or something on the bottom, and then their unit for living is above their shop. So those are some concepts. There's also proposals for, and they're concepts at this stage because there hasn't been a draft submitted for higher density as well for an apartment, like maybe a 3 or 4 story walk up, similar to what has already been done in town, maybe slightly different. And then some additional forms of housing that are mixed, meaning that could be back-to-back townhouses, it could be semis, it could be, there could be, and likely will be, some singles in there. And then the front portion will be strictly commercial. So that's purely because that's the best value for commercial, being right on the highway and getting that exposure from the highway. And quite frankly, when you get a busy highway, it doesn't tend to do well with residential really close by, because highways can get noisy after a while. So it's better if the residential is further away from that. So that site, number one, is currently under an MZO, meaning that it's already has a provincial zoning on it. So that zoning is a blanket zoning on that parcel that allows those various things that I just spoke of. It hasn't been parceled out yet, though. So the next step would be for the developer or the township to come in and do some sort of draft plan and parcel it out on how they want it to develop. And they would bring that forward at that time. So that's the first area I wanted to point out. Then 2 and 3 are currently vacant. There are no immediate plans for that, but we would anticipate over time those 2 pieces would be eventually developed as well. Moving further north, 4A and 4B. 4A is pretty well developed out now. There's only 1 phase left in it still to be started, and that's phase 9. And we're working through with them right now to get the approvals to start that phase now, which will be going to council in the hopefully not too distant future. 4B is what we call phase 11, and that is the site that has been advertised as having a McDonald's in it. So that there is a proposal for that. It's not finalized yet by any means. They were working through site plan control for the subdivision, but also, or pardon me, for the McDonald's, but also subdivision agreements, servicing allocations, and things like that for that phase 11. So there's still quite a bit of work yet to be done, but we're hoping in the next few weeks to have that well underway. And that is sort of the last piece that was part of that original draft plan approval that was done 4 or 5 years ago now. That Flato East, which was like 100 plus acres there, that was done. So that'll be finally done and finished. Then I'll take you further north, where it's 13A is, and it's the orange up at the top there, 13A, 13B, and 23 there, all in that area. So in that area, the first phase, 13A, is of the Glenelg subdivision, and this is right beside where I noted that the 1 parcel for a potential site for the affordable housing site. It's just to the west of that. So 3A is, if you've ever been down there, is well underway. It's nearing completion. 3 13B, pardon me, has not proceeded just yet. They're working on the various approvals for that, but they need to get things like servicing allocation and that sort of thing for that phase. And then the bigger phase is 23, and 23 is a quite large phase. We call it the Glenelg Phase 3, and at this point we really have been advocating and talking strongly with the school board, actually, to see about getting a new school site in this particular subdivision. And it was at a public meeting, and that was one of the, correct me if I'm wrong, Martin, but that was one of the primary considerations at that meeting, was to address the overcrowding at the other two schools in Dundalk. And so there is efforts to try and address that in this phase. It just becomes a question of how best to do that and moving forward with that. So we're hoping to see something soon from them that will show the full changes with the plan. They have submitted a plan to the County of Grey for consideration, because it goes through this again. 23 is part of another provincial zoning order, so it goes to the county for a subdivision approval as opposed to the township. And in that submission, they did indicate, I believe it's an 8-acre parcel of land to be set aside for a school site. So that's positive. That now the province has to come to the table and actually allocate funding for the school. So the developer has done their bit, and the township has done their bit in terms of advocating for it. Now it's not even the school board, it's the province has to come forward and give the money to the school board to develop that. So we'll see what happens, but I'm hopeful that will help address things. Phase 10 there, you can see is quite, or not phase 10, number 10 there is quite a large area. That's also part of the MZO area. However, there's no immediate plans submitted yet for that area. Doesn't mean it won't develop. It's under the provincial zoning order. It's just a matter of, I think they're doing it in stages, so that they're doing this stage first, and then they'll proceed towards the highway next. So just underneath that, you'll see there's an 11 under the 23. There's an 11 there. That is our other developer, White Rose, who are proposing 88 units in that area with a mix of densities. There are obviously developers have a few single family units, but there's also townhouse units, and there was I believe they made a presentation last year, was it to council or to this committee, about doing some sort of affordable housing option in one of the blocks in that plan. So yeah. That is proceeding. They're working on their subdivision agreement now, and once they get that, then they can continue working with building homes. And the only other parcel right now that I want to note that is, I guess, potential for development is number 24 over here on towards the west side there, and that's what we call the Ida Street parcel, and it's a fairly weird shaped parcel, but it does have a good potential for development, being within the MZO order as well as within the settlement boundary, and servicing is not that difficult for it. So there's certainly some opportunities there. Other than that, there are some other potential sites where we've talked with developers about developing them, but we haven't actually seen the draft plans come in. So just as an example, there's in towards the middle of the lot or of the parcels here, there's 22 and 8 that are sort of next to the fairgrounds there. Those two parcels in that area, we've spoken with developers, different developers, and they've come through and they're doing their studies and due diligence and whatnot, but they haven't actually submitted proposals for those sites yet. I'm hopeful that they will. And if that transpires, that's another number of units to add to the count, if you will. And then the rest of the stuff to the south there, and remember around Eco Park, that's industrial lands that are for businesses and whatnot. So, and it doesn't promote residential uses in that area. So that's sort of a high level overview of what's sort of happening right now. Obviously, it can change, and like there are some other numbers there that are potential sites, but nobody has come forward to say, yes, we want to develop those or anything like that.
Well, thank you, Clinton. If I might have first crack at questions, and then I'll open it up to the other committees. It went off the screen. The two, number 10 and the one around the two highway lots. There were concept plans for both of them. Thank you, Holly. Yeah, so you're looking at number 10 and you're looking at 1, 2, 3. There were concept plans for them. And as you mentioned, all different types of housing, work to live, townhomes, all that kind of thing. And that Flato has actually said that. That's where he wants these buildings because it's close to the highway. It was the same concept plan for number 10 too. There was more than one apartment buildings. What height, I don't know. Do we have any say, if that was a concept then, do we have any say in saying, stick to the concept, especially with housing? And could we as a committee say, well, you propose this is what housing's all about. Can you stick to it? It's their property, it's their land. So do we have any power at all? That's what I'm asking. Even as a municipality.
The short answer is yes, you do have some power to recommend to them to revise their plans and come back with some higher density if that's what you choose. I'll just, one point I want to make though, when you were talking about the concepts, 2 and 3 there did not have any concepts on them because they're not actually owned by Flato. They're independently owned, and so they weren't part of the scenario for any potential development. But
1 and 10 then.
Yeah, 1 and 10 are the primary ones.
Yeah.
So with those, a concept plan is just that. It's a concept to show how it could look, not necessarily how it will look. As you delve down into the more detailed design, sometimes things get refined a little bit. That doesn't mean to say that staff and council aren't trying to encourage more development to take place at a higher density or to get different things. It wasn't until after we went back to the developer for number 23, the phase 3, and said, look, we really want you to address this school site issue, that they turned around and I don't want to say demolished, but erased a good section of that area that had homes in it to essentially have a big block there that they're gonna have a school there, right? So it's a trade-off. We say here's our concerns, and then they try and meet those. And maybe we don't want all of our park space all spread out all over the place. Maybe we want to consolidate it to make it bigger in one area than in another, so you can have bigger parks as opposed to limiting the size of them. We can say to them, okay, well, maybe in 23, you could have more residential units there if you promise, or you don't promise, you put it in a subdivision agreement to put more of the land in a different section of the development in a later section. So those are the types of things that we negotiate with them and talk to them about. And certainly higher density has always come up. You may recall not too long ago, we actually did what they call a red line revision for the phase 2 to just to the west of that site, where they increased the density by removing singles and putting in townhomes, quite a few townhomes actually. And they did that because that was the market demand. They want to see a higher density in those smaller lots that are more affordable. I'm not saying they're affordable. I'm just saying they're more affordable.
Semantic.
Yeah. So that's the kind of thing that we try and encourage on those sites.
Okay. Holly, you have your hand up. Am I doing something wrong?
No, you're not at all. Just for clarification, Clinton, when you say that you have power to negotiate, that would be done through the committee, would make the recommendation to council, and then council would make the recommendation to the developer through staff.
Yes.
This seemed like a perfect example kind of to give.
Yes.
And in February, there was a resolution done about density, increased density at one of our meetings. So I just kind of wanted to, it just seemed like a good example at the time, just to point it out, that would be done through council, but following a recommendation that was either approved by the committee.
Yeah, so staff do negotiate, but ultimately we're negotiating on the part of the township but it goes to council and they're the ones who have the final say, right? So.
Okay. Yeah, we'll open it up for a short while. Jerry, you had your hand up?
Just a question about a resolution at this point. Can the resolution be as general as the committee recommends that the administration and council of Southgate hold the developer to the plans that they've submitted, or something that would sort of hold their feet to the fire a little bit? Or does it need to be more specific than that?
Holly first.
I kind of think it has to be the other way. Only because if you say you hold it to the plan that they have submitted, if there's a technical reason why that plan can't work, then we can't follow that directive. So just as an example, say through their investigations, they needed to change the plan because there was a natural heritage feature or something that came out of the additional studies they did that required the road to be rerouted. If they reroute it, now it doesn't meet the plan anymore, and that might change the density. So you can't be that specific in your resolution, or we can't hold them to that. So you have to say more general in terms of to either maintain or work to maintain or increase the densities that they have proposed and the mixes of uses that they've proposed, something to that effect.
So
Okay.
in our principles, number 4 principles, all housing projects should include a mix of market, subsidized, and or rent geared to income and rent to own options, percentages to be planned. Can we use that as the resolution?
Sorry, if I may, in February, there was a resolution done about mixed use and density. So that would be the most recent one that council would be informed of and approved on. And I believe Clinton has that report ready to go to council. So I just wanted to provide that update as well.
Okay, thanks, Holly. That was a second follow-up. I see Carolyn, one more question, if you can.
Yeah, just really quickly, I wonder if instead of trying to pass something today really quickly, if we should do something that is more of a policy or guiding principles. So because every situation might be different, and I think that sometimes we become aware, like it's going to council first, right? And so if there were guiding principles and policies that could say we would like council when considering new applications to consider these things as priorities or whatever, but I think that has to take some thought and maybe not be able to do it tonight. So I was wondering if that might be something appropriate in your mind, Holly and Clinton, that we should work on and consider in the future. If that would be an appropriate procedure.
Absolutely. To work on something like that, to have council consider that.
Because sometimes we're asking for things and it's already done, like it's too far along, right? So I think if there was something that was preemptive with priorities, then that would work.
Well, we can't do anything with the development that's, as you say,
No,
Carolyn, we
right?
can't do anything, but if we have 10 and we have number 1, then we can say, look, like this is, I mentioned it before, we're on a cusp of two, a busy county road. We have, the highway, we have, and Clinton knows this, I always talk about it. We could be a big transit hub. So, following Flato's lines of, that's where he wants, the people in the affordable housing and, apartments. Well, that's the strength. That's what we can say. It's not developed yet. Let's get that there. So we can talk about that, but that is a good idea. For
And
sure.
I think the market will
future.
change. Like if we're talking over the next 20 years, the market could change, and what might be attainable or affordable might be very different. So if we look at it, even going back to what Charles was talking about, is looking at it, the different segments with some guiding principles, then right from the ground level, then that might help.
I support that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we should look into that. So anyway, Clinton, thank you very much. So do we have to do a resolution? Oh, Muriel,
Well,
sorry, love.
yeah, I'm just wondering, a resolution perhaps, but I'm just wondering, is this an appropriate theme for a subcommittee to actually work up these principles?
Well, considering my time frame, I won't be part of that subcommittee. I will say that right now. But I think, just to keep it kind of informal, why not all of us just think of what kind of development we want in the newer phases, whether it's Flato, White Rose, whatever, and then just send them to Holly. She has too much work to do already, but as long as we can have an idea, or send them to me and Jerry, and then we can talk about it and say, hey, this is what a policy is. So Holly?
Yeah, certainly. I would suggest perhaps sending it through to the chair. And then if Councillor Shipson could send it through to Clinton and myself, Clint may be able to formulate some kind of report just to see if we're on the right track. And then at that time, we could make a formal resolution. I do agree with what Carolyn is saying, that I think it's something that needs a bit more preparation rather than doing it on the spot. So I think that would definitely be a good idea. So certainly if you want to forward your ideas through the chair, and then, like I said, Councillor Shipson, if you could funnel those through Clinton and myself, that would be great.
For sure. No problem. Okay. Holly, go ahead, Muriel. I'll never say no to you.
Just in terms of process, though, does that mean then it comes back to the committee at the next meeting, and then hopefully formalize, and then to council? I was trying to fast track.
Well, we're talking about developments that aren't even happening yet, and site plans and stuff. So there's lots of time, I think, there. Clinton, would you agree with that?
Yes, there is definitely time there.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So that was 6.3. Holly, do we need there's nothing there for being resolved. That was just a verbal update, right?
Yeah, we don't need a formal resolution for that
Okay.
one. I think if the committee members just want to pass their information along, we can come up with something down the road.
Okay, so I can move to number 7, new business. Awesome. 7.1, rural homelessness. Nola, if you can give a brief synopsis of what you went to and did.
I'd be happy to do that. And thank you for making it possible for me to go. I really enjoyed it. It was, there's a report included in what Holly shared. And I'm just going to go right to the key points from the symposium. It was a 3-day event and it was really well organized. And there were lots of opportunities for networking as well as, 6 keynotes. I mean, these guys went over and above. But my takeaways from this, there were a couple of epiphanies for me, but there's a couple of institutions that are sitting there that are actually actively involved in helping rural communities address their housing needs, whether it be homelessness or affordable housing. And that so that they co-hosted the symposium. So the Rural Development Network, I think these are really important agencies for us to connect with if we're not already doing that. But the RDN spans the entire breadth of Canada, and a lot of the initiatives that were presented were basically seeded. They got the funding to start those things going. And then, they're creating a learning cycle with whatever they're doing. So, and then sharing it with everybody. And there's that includes the storage pods for the homeless, the Indigenous housing initiatives. And there were a lot of other things I'd never heard of before, like this cabin prefab kind of a housing solution that can go up pretty quickly and it's fairly affordable and it can be on or off grid. But I don't know if that could be something useful, but it seems to be something that they were putting forth. And the Rural Ontario Institute is also working with rural communities. They work together, but it's geared to rural areas and providing supports for initiatives. And they're really working at launching this rural housing information system, which is a housing to give current data to these institutions like municipalities, counties, so that they know what they're dealing with. In my excitement when they were presenting it, I signed on, but I don't know if that's kind of going into what Carolyn was talking about. I signed on and I thought, oops, should I have done that? Mm-hmm. But you can always reject it when it comes through or if it comes through. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I thought that they were great, really terrific institutions that we should tap into because they seem to have seed money. Both of them have different pots of money. And the overwhelming theme from people that attended, whether we were talking in networks or the presenters or the hosts, it's that municipalities can and really need to be the institutions that are actively involved on the ground and assessing and responding to the affordable housing and homelessness, because without housing for low to mid-income families, a community cannot grow. If you can't have places for you, the people that work in your community to live, then you've got a real problem. And then in terms of the people that presented about homelessness really spoke very eloquently, and they both came from real lived experience in that realm, which was kind of incredible. It was very moving. And they said, consider what home means. And, basically it's where people, everybody in a household, they learn everything about life. And it's basically you're stunting people's potential if they don't have that starting point of a home that's safe and secure. And actually that matches with this committee's terms of reference, where the principles are everyone has a right to live somewhere in security, peace, and dignity. And so I think that, that brings us into the frame for action on the ground. And so there is a real need for data in order to determine the needs of the community, which is, I think you all know that. And the homelessness issue, for me, this was a bit of an epiphany. It's very, very different from the presenters that presented and from the responses that I was hearing. When you have a homelessness problem, it's very visible. The communities were responding to, tent cities and people living in vestibules. I don't think we have that here, but I could be corrected. But it's a very visible problem that's being responded to, and the response is going to be very different, and it requires more than just the municipality. I think the municipality can be like take a lead and be somebody that can help bring the parties together to deal with that, because you really need the wraparound services to deal with homelessness, because you're talking largely mental health issues, and so you need the social assistance, you need the you need all kinds of things that we as a municipality, you just are not prepared or equipped to deal with. So it's a very different thing to social housing. And I think that's where the suggestion from Charles was good, that we really do need, amongst ourselves even, we need to really understand the distinction in these terms. And there's a lot of stigma attached to both homelessness and to social housing, which is unwarranted. And I think that really we're talking about a market economy that has created a very unaffordable situation where people all of a sudden find themselves fully employed and not able to, live in a home because they can't afford it, because they just simply don't make enough money. And so that's where the municipalities and all the other levels of government and all the other institutions really do need to have as was pointed out by Carolyn, we need to set forth the criteria and have those principles clearly in front of us in terms of what going forward we want to see developed. And, I think that there are some areas that have done this very well, which we can all learn from, but I think it's important to have that education bit that Charles was talking about, where you're bringing the community along and helping them understand that, there shouldn't be a negative connotation, that there's a very real need. So also the homelessness responses, there was a lot of money, like you have to make a major investment to get something like a shelter pod ready and suited for human use. And it's really just from 8 p.m. at night to 9 a.m. in the morning. So it's very temporary. They get all wished out the next day, and they have to go and seek the other services. There's no showers, nothing like that. And, so they just, it takes a lot of other agencies that would have to come in and fill in the gaps of something like that. And then the ongoing supervision of something like that is going to have a cost to it as well, in terms of, getting them out and cleaned out in the morning, and just the housekeeping of cleaning them and disinfecting and the garbage and everything else. It's just a whole different thing. And you really need to have partners, I guess, is what I'm thinking. That's what I was hearing, that you need to have partners. The municipality can't take on that ownership and the running of that. You need to have it like basically all hands on deck with something like that. And in terms of the affordable housing for low to mid-income families, that just requires us to have these intentional strategies and the principles clearly defined for what we want to see, for whether it's a not-for-profit or a private developer coming forward, that we have it clear in our mind. There needs to be a percentage of housing set aside for that's affordable. And when you look at affordable, let's remind ourselves what the minimum wage is. It's $15 an hour, I think, if you're lucky, maybe. And if they're lucky, they may get a 40-hour work week, which gives that brings you to a $720 a month. That would be your 30% of your income going to housing. I don't know about you, but I haven't seen that anywhere in that development. And even if you're working full-time, 40 hours, a full-time job, $25 an hour, you're looking at, $1,200 a month, which would represent 30% of your income. And that is the definition for affordability. It's very clear, 30% of your income. And that's acknowledged and accepted. And we have to press that, in terms of, making sure that we have that kind of affordability for people. I personally don't think the people going into the FLATO development, I don't think they're facing affordability issues if they can get their down payments and get those things set up. I don't think they're part of our concern, but I do think that the principles and criteria for like the higher densities that we're talking about are part of the criteria that we should be having, but I also think it should be tied to, I think Jerry or one of Martin, I think you mentioned this, that tied to income as well, like for affordability for the workers in the community. And so that's where this committee and the recommendations come in, to making sure that and I think that's an ongoing thing. I don't think that's a one-off. I don't think it's for this moment in time. I think it's going to be a habit from now on, and for whatever affordability becomes, it needs to vary to that. So I guess that was the report from the symposium. It was fantastic. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to go. I also attended a meeting with the Institute for Southern Georgian Bay, and which was looking at financialization options, because everybody is acknowledging that it can't be on the foot of the taxpayers, all this, the social housing and things like that, that we need new and creative ways of raising up good quality, affordable housing stock. And so there were couple presenters. They were from the Ottawa area. I think one for sure was. So social financing for affordable housing, just really quickly, the Ottawa Community Land Trust, the key person there presented on what they do. And they basically are doing what you're talking about doing, setting aside lands. Like, they're thinking ahead. They're always thinking ahead, and thinking ahead with setting aside lands or picking up buildings that can be converted to affordable housing. So the key elements are land trusts, and another one is the development of community bonds. Another presenter talked about how they use community bonds to raise capital locally that can be matched with other revenue streams, like funds from other governments. And this, I don't know if you've heard of it. I had not heard of it before, but the presenter was from a company called Tapestry. And they create community bonds, and they raise a lot of capital, millions of dollars in capital for local use. And there's the advantages of it to, like, CMHC, is that it's highly flexible. You can invite individuals as well as businesses to invest in it, and it creates, it's faster than securing government grants. I know that some things that were going to be developed in the Southern Georgian Bay area fell through because they couldn't get the funds fast enough, and then interest rates made it unaffordable. So there's just, it's about leveraging and getting access to the flow of capital. And so I can't say that I'm an expert on all this stuff, but it was really interesting, to the point that we'll be hearing about it and having another presentation, because it is, it's just another way of getting things done locally. So that's it. And
that includes 7.2, Nola?
Pardon me?
Did that include 7.2?
It sure did. Yeah, I did 1 and 2.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, I was muted. I was asking that. So, well, thank you very much. I'm glad you had you had 2 epiphanies. That's more than most people get in a month. So 7.3, we hear from Jerry. Thank you, Nola.
Mine will be quick. Because it came up earlier in the meeting, the opportunity with the Dundalk District Credit Union, my message is simply this: there's an example of a community group who are interested in helping to solve housing in our municipality. I suspect there are other groups out there too, and I would encourage all committee members, when they have a chance, chat with groups, agencies, and businesses and so on in the neighborhood. And if you think there's a chance of some funding and some partnerships, let Martin or myself know, and we will try to go through the proper channels, and we'll try to get something done. So that's it.
Awesome. And we're finally with you, Jordan. You've been very patient. Love to hear what you have to say.
Discussion for sure. Holly, are you able to pull my documents up? So just following our discussion in our last meeting about communication efforts and what we can do as a group to just spread some messaging on a few topics, I think our discussion from last meeting kind of showed that there is a couple different subjects that we could touch. Just general information around affordable housing, resources for different groups, including tenants and homeowners, and then kind of on the more builders or potential landlord side. So I've tried to create a few documents. There's 3 here. I'll try to just go over them quickly. They still are, I need to make some additional edits, and I was looking for some feedback from the group in certain areas, or in all areas. So I'll just start here with this first one. The first document is just basically an overview. Across all these documents, I was trying to find data that was as up to date as possible and as Southgate centric as possible. I know there's a load of information around affordable housing, like data in general, but I think to hit it home and to keep it local, that was an important step to take. So this one just gives a breakdown of, affordable housing, the term for people that might not know or think about it as an issue in Southgate, and then our role as a committee. At the bottom of that second paragraph, there was a blurb with all the X's. I think it's important within this document just to have and maybe all of them, to have like a call to action to say, hey, if you need additional resources or you want to help in some capacity, reach out to this group. And as we're not really a public facing group per se, I didn't really know what to put in there. So if anyone has any ideas about that, I think that would be beneficial. But the data on this first overview it's pretty basic. I took the information from our last census, and it shows that Southgate's population growth is doubled the housing supply. And so that is a pretty big indicator that there's not a lot of places to live, straight up. The other ones, the second figures show percentages of renters and homeowners that are not meeting that definition of affordable housing, being 1/3 of its gross monthly income on housing costs. So that's a little more awareness and eye-opening. Hey, affordable housing isn't a term that's for the homeless people or for a certain demographic. It really is affecting, as you can see, over 1/3 and nearly 1/5 of those two subtypes. And the third is just applications on the waiting list for Grey County housing, and then the 170,000 on Ontario as a whole. Again, just showing that this is an issue, and we need to increase the housing supply. So I think that it covers our basic message we're trying to put out to the community. Hey, this is a big issue, and it's kind of you can't ignore it anymore. If we keep going down to the second document, the last 2, they're kind of split out right now, resources for tenants, and it should be resources and tenants and homeowners, because I was just trying to find, real local resources that people in need in various situations. I think, as Charles mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, there's various situations that people might need assistance, and I think these cover a lot of those. So these are all linked and going out to websites that can provide real tangible assistance to people in different situations. There's Grey County housing programs. That's just applications for basic affordable housing. But then Grey County is promoting a lot of their sustainable housing benefits. Ontario Renovates program, which is assisting with repairs and stuff for current homeowners. Their home ownership program is assisting with loans for new homeowners. And then there's stuff like the short-term shelter program, YMCA of Owen Sound, Grey Bruce housing services for things like emergency shelter. So I think, like as Charles said, we need to consider the range of different demographics and groups that might fall under the purview of this committee. And I think I tried to capture that in this. There's some additional resources there at the bottom for just tenants getting assistance where needed. But if anyone has any other ideas about local, tangible programs and services that could be offered, I think it would be an appropriate spot to add them here. I do want to make copies. Actually, I'll talk about that at the end. If we can go down to the third one. This one is the least built out, and I think it should be more just resources for landlords in hopes of people putting additional rental units on the market to increase housing supply in Southgate. I tried to find some data around, the additional incomes renters were making, people with rental units were making. And I would still like to get some more about other financial benefits that aren't just purely rental income, because I think there is stuff like, lessen mortgage payments, gained equity on housing is just as big as the additional rental income that these landlords are getting. And I think that's important information to hopefully promote people to maybe consider that and get additional units on a market in Southgate. I think this could be a viable spot as well to put just basic information, maybe a resource that's already out there about the construction, during the construction process of a new home, what are easy steps to make that you can convert an additional unit at some point, like we've mentioned in this meeting a couple times. And then there's some renting in Ontario and just renting guides for landlords. I think this part, I could use some assistance maybe from Clinton about the specific steps people would have to take in Southgate to bring a rental unit, online in their house, whether that's in, whatever relevant bylaws or applications they need to take in regards to the municipality to make that happen. So maybe I can get those at some point or find them on the website or something, but I think that'd be a good part to add here. And that's the basic of what I have. I think these could be distributed after some additional edits are made. I would hope to distribute these digital ones with the links, but then also make copies that maybe just have a phone number for stuff like emergency shelter or Grey County housing and the previous one. And they could be posted locally around Southgate, community boards where appropriate. Holly, I had a question about posting these online. Are we able, if they get approved by council and everything, are we able to post these through the township's communication channels like their Facebook and on their website?
Yeah, absolutely. We can do that once the committee has kind of finalized everything. We certainly can post them to our website as a news article under the Affordable Attainable Committee section of the committees, and then to both of our or all of our social media.
Okay,
outlets as well.
perfect. That's just good to know. So yeah, I would like to take that after I get any feedback and work on stuff, probably before the next meeting, and officially push it to council at that point. But that's what I've created so far. Just wanted to get everyone's eyes on that, and if anyone had any feedback about any of that, I'd love to hear it.
Thanks, Jordan. Holly, with the part in there with all the X's of who to contact, do we have a group email, don't we? As far as we don't have anything like that. Like, would it be possible to do a group email? It's just so the housing committee at Southgate, or just, we don't really want our names out there.
Yeah, can you leave that with me? I just want to
Yeah.
confer with our clerk.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I have an answer, I can send an update. I'm not sure if it's best to flow through one of the staff members, which is what my initial thought is. However, I will just double check and then can send an update out to the committee.
Okay, thanks. And the only other thing I had there, Jordan, when I saw the renovations part in the second page, maybe especially with the pro bono law, you should put something in there about the renovations, because that is probably happening in Southgate. Not that we know of, but it is probably happening, because it's for damn sure happening everywhere else. So maybe that's just another point to put in there. Other than that, I guess with speaking about Clinton, there should be something with the building official too. So that could be added in there at a certain point. Anyway, that's it from me. So Holly, then Muriel.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Jordan, if you want to send an email to Clinton, you can CC myself, and we can provide you with the information that you're looking for in the zoning bylaw, I believe.
Okay. Awesome. Muriel?
Okay, I just wanted to applaud your efforts to make it local information and therefore hitting home for people. Jordan, thank you. And the other thing I wanted to ask, which sort of goes back to Nola's presentation too. Sorry, we have talked before about that there's a difficulty with getting local stats, like very specific stats, like who's on a housing waiting list for Southgate. We don't have that. It's a Grey County list. But I just wondered, Nola, you made comment too about the need for good statistics to support our ideas and our work, and not just for our committee, but for any housing group. Were there any ideas suggested on where those stats can be obtained or how we go about getting those?
Well, that was part of that Rural Ontario Institute's new database that they've funded, and so they've invested heavily into that. That's the one that I joined on to, and
Okay.
they're moving it. It's not totally complete yet, but you should be. At some point when it's complete, any municipality should be able to find itself and find out exactly what's going on, and any which way. Even developers should be able to access it. So it's like a multi-use kind of a thing, and it shows, it has all kinds of overlays with showing land available to be developed. It has all kinds of information, so it's a huge thing, and plus it makes sense of all the Statistics Canada data too, and you can compare yourself one municipality to another. So it's exciting to see. I don't think it's complete yet. Go ahead.
Sorry, they're collecting the information at this point to populate it?
They have populated it up. It's coming from the east, and they're into Ontario now, but I don't think it's totally complete.
Right.
But yeah, they're populating it, and they're trying to determine, like they've hired a professional company to do this, and they did a little presentation on it at the it was one of the keynote presentations at this symposium. It was quite impressive, but it's not complete yet, and it's a big thing to be doing.
Yes, it would be, and I'm just wondering where they'll get the information from.
Local, so I guess Stats Canada would be one, and contacting real estate developers. Like there's a whole, and probably people like Clinton planners. Then the whole thing the next job will be keeping it up to date. So I guess that'll be a whole other job.
For sure.
Anything else so we can move on? Thank you, Jordan. Jerry?
I just wanted to say one thing. Jordan, it is an excellent package. And then the very last page, it says affordable housing in Southgate, resources for landlords and developers. Is that number, that median annual net rental income, is that meant to entice people to have a rental suite in their home? Like that you can get $2,660 a month for the rental suite?
That was my thinking, and I know that's actually an annual figure from Stats Canada, which isn't the most. I was kind of surprised it was that low, to be honest. But that was my intention. Additional income is there on the table.
Okay, thank you. That's great.
Okay, awesome. Jerry?
Just thanks, Jordan, for all the work you put into that. I would really encourage us all to, if we have thoughts, get back to Jordan over the next couple of weeks. And it would be really nice, as Jordan had his timeline, is to try to get this ready for council in after our July meeting. So if we could sort of be in a position to, so I guess that behooves us to get, if we have any thoughts, get them to Jordan right away. So thanks, Jordan.
Awesome. All righty. So we will go into number 8, correspondence. Do I have a mover and seconder?
I'll move.
Thank you. Seconded by Jordan. Okay. Does anybody want to talk about anything? 8.1, 8.2? Muriel, go ahead, love.
I was just going to say that the the home share program that's written up in the Meaford Independent is being volunteer coordinated by a former Dundalk person who, if we were interested at any point, would probably come and talk to us. That's Diana, Diana Mills Domer.
Okay.
Yeah.
8.2, the CMHC Housing Accelerator Fund. I only put that in because it was something that I got at a conference. And I just kind of put it in there. It was such a short timeline. We know about timelines, Jerry, right? About getting grants in. And this is almost come due, but you have to have a specific plan in mind before you could, I believe, even go into this. So I only put it in for the future. If we do have a plan, if we do have a say in something like lot 1 or, number 10 or whatever it is, or the land that comes up, maybe from what Clinton said, we have to have some kind of idea of what we want to do with that land. That's the only reason I mentioned that, because there are grants and there are people out there. So if that's that, nothing else, we'll go to 9. We're looking at the next meeting, which is, I need a be resolved for accepting his information, Holly.
Yeah, we have a mover and a seconder, so just
Okay.
if there was any opposition, and if not, we can just have it be carried.
Yeah, so any opposition to correspondence? Nope. Okay, we'll move on then. That was carried. Next meeting. It is Tuesday, July 18th at 6 p.m. via Zoom. So if we can get everything to, I'll get you, Jerry. If we can get everything to Jordan and think about things, what we talked about, and send it to me and myself and Jerry, we can have something cooked up for Holly. Okay, Jerry, go ahead.
I just want to thank Clint and Alicia and Holly and all of the Southgate staff that are supporting our efforts. So thanks very much.
Amen. Thank you. All righty. So number 10, the adjournment. Do I have to move and second to here too? Well, I can't move it, so somebody else better. Carolyn will, and seconded by Muriel. Thank you, ladies. Be resolved that the committee adjourn the meeting at, I've got 2 laptops, 2 different times. How does that work? I'm going to say 7:57. Is that what you have, Holly? Cool. I don't know why it says 8:01 on the other one. Anyway, meeting adjourned at 7:57. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good night.